The sun was already shining brightly over Calabar when Success stepped out through the iron gates of her family's house. The city was awake and busy. The sounds of market sellers mixed with the noise of motorcycle taxis and the smell of spices drifted through the warm morning air. Success did not pay attention to any of it. She walked quickly, her clean shirt tucked into her navy blue skirt, her handbag hanging on her arm, and her eyes focused on the main road. Today was an important day for her, and she did not want anything to distract her. She was heading to a job interview at Cross River Holdings, and she wanted everything to go well. She glanced at her wristwatch, her lips pressed together. She could not afford to be late. She blamed Madame Stella, her adoptive mother, for insisting she eat breakfast before leaving. She also blamed the family driver for not being around to drop her off, and the gatekeeper for being so slow with the keys. In Success's mind, it always seemed like little things were getting in her way. Lately, life had been full of disappointments, with failed job interviews, rejections, and advice she did not ask for from relatives. Her pride, which used to protect her, now felt heavy and uncomfortable. She turned onto the street that led to the main road. The market stretched out ahead of her, full of colors, noise, and people. Normally, Success would avoid the market, but today she needed a shortcut. She hurried into the busy area, stepping around baskets of fruit and tables full of dried fish. That was when she saw her. The Fufu seller was an older woman with deep brown skin and sad eyes. She sat behind a small wooden table with steaming wraps of fufu piled high. Her wrapper was old and faded, and her scarf was once bright yellow but now looked tired. A small sign leaned against her table with the words, "Hot fufu, 300 naira." Success frowned. "Excuse me, please move," she said sharply when the woman did not notice her at first. Mama Friday, as others called her, turned around in surprise at the loud voice. "I am sorry, my daughter," she said gently, her voice weak from years of selling food on the street. In her hurry to get out of the way, Mama Friday's elbow hit her own pot, spilling hot soup onto Success's skirt. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. Success stared at the stain on her neat skirt. All around them, market sellers and shoppers looked on. "You have ruined my clothes!" Success shouted, her voice shaking with anger. "Do you know how expensive this skirt is? Can you even pay for the cleaning? Look at what you have done." Mama Friday's hands shook as she reached for an old rag. "I am so sorry. Please let me help you." "Do not touch me," Success said, pulling away. Her face was red with anger and embarrassment. She could feel people watching, some shaking their heads and others whispering. The old woman looked ashamed and her eyes grew wet, but Success did not care. She turned her back and walked away quickly, her heels clicking on the rough ground. She muttered under her breath, loud enough for others to hear, "People like you will never change. No wonder you are still here selling fufu in this heat." A few market women called out, telling her to show some kindness to the old woman, but Success ignored them. She felt hurt and angry, and she did not want to think about anyone else's problems. When she reached the main road, Success tried to wipe off the stain, but it only made things worse. She blinked back tears, took a deep breath, and checked her reflection in her phone. She walked on toward the city, telling herself to forget about what had just happened. She did not see Mama Friday watching her leave. The old woman's face was tight with pain, not just from embarrassment but from something deeper. In the bright morning sun, Mama Friday's hands shook, and her eyes filled with sadness as she watched Success disappear into the busy city. Success, riding in a keke toward the office buildings, thought only of her interview and her future. She did not spare a single thought for the poor fufu seller she had left behind in the market. Success returned home late that afternoon. The job interview at Cross River Holdings did not go as she hoped. The manager, a tired-looking man with a quick smile, listened politely to her answers but asked only a few questions before ending the meeting. As she left the building, Success could sense that she was just one more name on a long list. She tried to hide her disappointment, but as she walked back through the crowded streets of Calabar, her anger from the morning returned. She thought again of the Fufu seller in the market, the embarrassment, the ruined skirt, and how nothing in her life seemed to be working out the way she deserved. When she reached home, Madame Stella was sitting in her usual chair in the living room, wrapped in a patterned shawl even though the day was still warm. She looked up with concern as Success entered. "How did it go, my dear?" Madame Stella asked softly. Success forced a smile. "It was fine," she said. "They said they would get back to me." She went to her room before Madame Stella could ask more. Success lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the interview in her mind and growing more restless with every passing minute. For the next week, Success continued to look for work, but everywhere she went, the answer was always the same. "We will let you know." She started to feel like a stranger in her own life. Her friends from school, who used to call every day, now spoke only about their new jobs and exciting lives. Success avoided their calls, feeling embarrassed and alone. She kept seeing Mama Friday in the market, always in the same spot, selling her hot fufu. Each time their eyes met, Success would quickly look away or cross to the other side of the street. Sometimes, she would hear the old woman's gentle voice calling out to customers, or see her helping a child with their change. There was something in the way Mama Friday looked at her, soft, searching, but also sad. Success did not want to think about it. One rainy afternoon, as Success waited for the storm to pass under a shop awning, she saw Mama Friday hurrying to pack up her food stand. The wind pulled at her scarf, and her hands struggled to keep her table steady. A group of boys ran by, one of them bumping into the table and knocking some fufu to the ground. Mama Friday looked tired but did not shout. She quietly picked up what she could save, gathered the rest, and tucked it under her faded wrapper. The boys laughed and ran on. Success watched, feeling an uncomfortable ache in her chest. She told herself that Mama Friday's troubles were none of her business. She remembered how the old woman had ruined her skirt. That was all that mattered. Success tried to brush the guilt away, but it followed her home like a shadow. That evening, after dinner, Success found Madame Stella coughing in her room. She brought her some water and asked if she needed medicine, but Madame Stella just smiled and shook her head. "I am just tired," she said. "Do not worry, my dear." But Success did worry. She noticed Madame Stella had become weaker. She moved more slowly, sometimes forgetting things or sleeping through the afternoon. One day, Success found Madame Stella asleep in her chair, an old letter resting on her lap. Success picked it up and was surprised to see her own name written at the top. She opened the letter and read, "My darling Success, there are things about your past I have not been able to say. I am not the mother who gave birth to you. I wish I was. I loved you from the day you came into my life, but your real mother is still alive. She is near. She has always watched over you, even though you do not know her. Forgive me for keeping this secret for so long." Success stood in shock. She stared at the words, trying to make sense of them. She wanted to be angry, but instead she felt empty and confused. She folded the letter and put it back where she found it. That night, Success barely slept. She kept thinking about the letter, about her mother's tired face, and about the old woman in the market. Days went by, but Success could not shake the feeling that something in her life had shifted. The world she knew seemed suddenly unfamiliar. She began to notice more about the people around her, the children who played in the market, the women selling vegetables, even the old men who gathered by the roadside to talk about politics and football. It was as if a curtain had been lifted from her eyes. One morning, Success saw Mama Friday sitting alone in the market before the day began. The old woman was looking at a faded photograph, her fingers tracing the edges gently. When she noticed Success watching, she quickly folded it and tucked it into her wrapper. Their eyes met for a moment, and Success felt the same ache she had felt before. She turned away quickly, afraid to let the old woman see her uncertainty. The days stretched on. Madame Stella's health continued to decline, and Success found herself growing more afraid of what might happen next. The city felt bigger and colder. Even the busy market did not feel as bright as before. Success thought about the letter every day, but she never spoke to Madame Stella about it. She tried to ignore the strange feelings inside her, tried to hold on to her pride and her old anger, but something deep inside had begun to change. The morning air was heavy, and Success felt it pressing against her chest as she woke up. The house was quiet, except for the soft sound of Madame Stella's cough from the next room. Success was worried about her adoptive mother, but Madame Stella always waved away her concerns with a tired smile. Success felt helpless, not knowing how to make things better. That day, she decided to go out and buy some medicine and groceries for the house. She left the gate behind, walking with her head down, lost in her thoughts. The streets of Calabar were alive as usual, with cars and tricycles weaving between each other, market sellers calling out, and school children laughing on their way to class. Success barely noticed any of it. As she crossed the road near the busy roundabout, her phone rang. She reached for it and tried to answer, but at that moment, a motorcycle sped around the corner, its horn blaring. Success stepped back quickly, but her foot slipped on a patch of sand. The world spun for a split second, then everything went black. When Success opened her eyes, she was lying in a hospital bed, weak and confused. The room was white and bright, and the air smelled of antiseptic. A nurse bent over her, checking her pulse and adjusting the drip in her arm. Madame Stella sat by the bed, her eyes swollen from crying. "Thank God you are awake, my dear," Madame Stella said, her voice shaking. "You have been here since yesterday." Success tried to speak, but her throat was dry and her head hurt. She blinked at the ceiling, trying to remember what had happened. She only recalled the blaring horn and the hard ground. A doctor soon came in and explained that Success had lost a lot of blood from a cut on her leg and needed a transfusion. "You have a rare blood type," the doctor said. "We could not find a match in the hospital, and your mother is not compatible." It was a difficult situation. Success looked at Madame Stella, who squeezed her hand. "We almost lost you," Madame Stella whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. Success felt weak and tired, but she listened carefully as the nurse entered the room with some water. "You are very lucky," the nurse said gently. "We were searching for a donor all morning." Then an older woman who was here for someone else came forward and offered her blood. She was a perfect match. Success felt a strange chill at those words. She did not remember anyone, and she was too tired to ask more questions. As she drifted back to sleep, she dreamed of strange faces and voices, none of them familiar. Over the next few days, Success recovered slowly. Madame Stella barely left her side, but Success noticed how thin and tired she looked. Each morning, a nurse would come in and tell Success how lucky she was to be alive. "The woman who donated the blood refused to give her name," the nurse said. "She just left quietly when the doctor said you would be all right. She seemed very worried about you." Success was puzzled. Who would care enough to do such a thing for her, and then leave without a word? Late one evening, as Success sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker through the hospital glass, she saw an old woman walking slowly down the hospital corridor. The woman was wrapped in a faded yellow scarf, carrying a small bag at her side. For a moment, Success thought she looked familiar. She squinted through the dim light, her heart beating faster. Then she realized it was Mama Friday, the Fufu seller from the market. The old woman was moving quietly, her eyes lowered, as if she did not want to be seen. Success felt a rush of confusion. What was Mama Friday doing in the hospital? Was she the one who had saved her life? Success watched as Mama Friday paused at the nurse's desk, spoke quietly with the nurse, and then slipped away down the hall and out the door. The nurse looked up and noticed Success watching. She smiled gently. "Do you know her?" she asked. "She came to check on you again today. She's been coming every day since you were brought in." Success shook her head slowly. "No, I do not know her," she replied, but the words felt wrong in her mouth. That night, as Success lay in bed, she could not sleep. She thought about the accident, about the mysterious woman who had saved her, and about the letter she found in Madame Stella's room. She remembered Mama Friday's gentle eyes, the way she always watched her in the market, and the sadness on her face. A strange feeling grew inside her, a mix of fear, hope, and something she did not want to name. Was it possible that there was more to Mama Friday than she thought? Why would a woman she had treated so badly go out of her way to help her? The next morning, the doctor announced that Success would soon be well enough to go home. Madame Stella hugged her and thanked God. But Success felt restless, a storm of questions swirling inside her. She knew she could not ignore the truth any longer. As Success was being wheeled down the corridor to leave, she saw Mama Friday standing by the exit, her back turned. She hesitated, unsure of what to do, but before she could speak, Mama Friday slipped quietly out into the street, disappearing into the morning crowd. Success clutched the arms of her wheelchair, feeling a sudden emptiness in her chest. The answers she wanted seemed so close, but still just out of reach. What was Mama Friday hiding? And what secret was Madame Stella still keeping from her? Success knew that the time for truth was coming, and for the first time in her life, she was afraid of what she might find. The days after Success returned home from the hospital were strangely quiet. The city of Calabar was as busy as ever, but inside Madame Stella's house, a new heaviness settled over everything. Success spent hours just staring out the window or walking slowly from room to room. The questions that had filled her mind in the hospital did not go away. If anything, they became louder. Who had saved her life? Why did Mama Friday keep appearing in her world? And what truth was Madame Stella hiding? One afternoon, Success found Madame Stella sitting alone in the living room. The older woman looked weaker than before, her hands trembling as she sipped from a cup of tea. Success watched her in silence for a moment, her heart beating faster. "Madame Stella," Success said softly, "can we talk?" Madame Stella looked up, her eyes tired but kind. She nodded, and Success sat down beside her. "There are things I do not understand," Success began. "When I was in the hospital, the nurses said someone donated blood for me. They said she came every day to check on me. I think it was Mama Friday, the Fufu seller in the market. Why would she do that for me?" Madame Stella put her cup down and closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, Success saw they were wet with tears. "I have kept this from you for too long," Madame Stella said quietly. "You deserve to know the truth." Success listened, her hands twisting in her lap. "You were not born to me," Madame Stella said. "You came to me as a baby, so small and helpless. Your real mother was very young and very poor. She could not care for you, so she gave you to me, hoping I could give you a better life. She asked me to love you as my own, and I have tried to do that every day." Success sat in silence, hardly breathing. Her mind spun with memories and new questions. "Your real mother," Madame Stella continued, "never left Calabar. She could not stay away from you. She became the woman you see in the market, Mama Friday. She has watched you from a distance all these years, always hoping for a chance to be close to you." Success shook her head slowly, not sure if she could believe it. "Mama Friday? But I have been so cruel to her." Madame Stella reached for her hand. "She never blamed you. When you were in the hospital, and no one else could help, she came forward. She gave her blood so you could live. She came to see you every day. She loves you, even if you did not know it." Tears filled Success's eyes as the truth settled into her heart. The old woman she had scorned, the woman she looked down on and treated harshly, was her own mother. Every sharp word, every cold glance came back to her now, heavy with regret. "I need to see her," Success whispered. With Madame Stella's blessing, Success left the house and walked to the market. The streets were crowded, and the air was full of voices and smells, but all Success could see was the small Fufu stand at the end of the road. Mama Friday was there, serving food with her usual quiet strength. Success walked up and stopped in front of her. Mama Friday looked up, her hands pausing mid-motion. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Success's voice trembled. "I know the truth. You are my mother." Tears slipped down Mama Friday's cheeks. She dropped her spoon and covered her mouth, shaking with silent sobs. The market noise seemed to fade away. "I am so sorry," Success said, her own tears falling. "I did not know. I was unkind. I did not understand." Mama Friday reached for her, and Success stepped into her arms. The hug was gentle but strong, a connection that had waited so long to be found. "I never stopped loving you," Mama Friday whispered. "I watched you grow, even from far away. I prayed for you every day." They stood together for a long time, holding each other. The pain and secrets of the past did not disappear, but now there was a new hope, a chance to build something honest and true. When Success finally pulled back, she smiled through her tears. "Let me help you here," she said. "Let me be part of your life." Mama Friday nodded, her face bright with joy and relief. For the first time in years, she did not feel alone. As the sun set over Calabar, Success knew her life had changed forever. She walked home later that evening, arm in arm with her mother. The city around them was still noisy and busy, but Success felt a peace she had never known before. The past was painful, but the future was filled with the promise of forgiveness and love.